Well, hello and welcome to this video. First, I want to say, hey, it's Real Love Revolution season, people, and you know what that means. That for the full month leading up to the start of my 12-week signature program, Real Love Revolution, all of my content that I put out has to do with love, communication, healthy love, self-love, and how to up your communication game. So let me ask you, when you are in conflict, do you clam up? Do you run away? Do you escalate it? Do you explode? Because each of us has a conflict communication style. And in today's video, I'm going to be teaching you how to uncover your conflict communication style. And I'm also breaking down the top 4 most common communication in conflict issues that people experience. And I'm giving you some tips and scripts that you can use when you find yourself in that situation. So before we get started, if you have not a subscriber yet, hit the subscribe button. Hit the little bell so whenever I put out something new, which is every single Tuesday, I roll out something new and juicy to up the quality of your life. I don't want you to miss it. And if you're new with my crew, hey, drop a comment. Introduce yourself. We are a friendly bunch. My name is Terri Cole, and I am the author of Boundary Boss, which you can get at boundarybossbook.com. Thank you for all of your participation. I love this channel so much. I love this crew. I love to highlight what you say about the episodes that come out. So, Marion says, under the episode of When and How to Fight, I really appreciate getting to listen to you and your guests. Thank you. My emotions flare up at some of the most unexpected times. It certainly impairs effective communication in all settings. Thank you for the suggestions and guides. It is really helping. Well, Marion, thank you for being a part of my crew. Now, let's move into today's content. Let's determine your communication style. That is what we're doing first. So, effective communication, especially during conflict, can be one of the most challenging parts of any relationship, right? It's crucial to understand what it is that you do when you are activated in a conflict, because you have to learn to communicate, especially when you're in conflict, if you want to be in healthy relationships, whether they're love relationships or whether they're friendships. So let's just break it down. Communication itself can only be 2 ways, effective and ineffective, right? Communication styles themselves. So what is ineffective? It means indirect. Right? It means you're not getting to the point, never clearly stating your intention. There's lots of different ways of being indirect. We'll go over some of them throughout this episode, but being passive-aggressive is being indirect. Also, being unclear about what it is that you're saying, being very vague, that is indirect and ineffective communication. Sometimes it's nonverbal, right? There's a lot of passive aggression that we can express with our body language and not say any words at all. Do you ever use the eye roll or a heavy sigh or slam a door? Anybody? I know somebody has, because I definitely have. So know that there's lots of different ways that we can ineffectively communicate, because here's the thing. We can't just ignore the way that we feel. And as much as we'd like to avoid it, if we don't know how to communicate during conflict, it still finds a way to seep into what we're doing, the way we're behaving, our attitude, our body language. So hopefully in this episode, you're going to learn how to effectively communicate while you're in conflict. So ineffective is indirect. Now, direct is the effective way to do it. Now, we can do that because here's the thing with direct communication. It is to the point. There is no doubt to the meaning behind your words. It doesn't mean that you have to do it with massive aggression. It doesn't mean you're yelling. It means clarity of language. You're not hiding the true meaning of what it is you want to say underneath a bunch of other crap, so the people that you're talking to have no idea what you're talking about. And again, assertive communication means that we have to speak up. And again, assertive is not aggressive, but for many of you who fear speaking up, you may hear it that way. When you hear assertive, does it sound like you need to be caustic? Does it sound like you need to be mean? Well, you don't. And also, along with this episode, I've created a guide you can get at terricole.com/guide, which I'm giving you a whole list of the more specifics of the direct and indirect communication actions that you can take. But I think you get the point for our purposes now. So think about it. Are you more of a direct communicator, or are you more of an indirect communicator? And it's just you and you, so be honest with yourself. And I'm going to move into the 4 most common relationship communication issues that I have seen as a psychotherapist. So, conflict number 1 is listening to talk, not understand. I'm going to say that again. Listening to talk, right? You can't wait to get your point across, but not to understand. So, the obvious is to say, listen with an open heart and mind. When we're really an effective listener, we are creating space for the other person to share what it is that they really want to share. Listen with the intention, right? The mindful intention of understanding, not gathering evidence to make the other person wrong, which can be really tempting, especially when you're in conflict. So part of what you can do if you're in a romantic relationship is create regular dates to discuss things openly so that you normalize the problem solving process. Because the more we avoid, the more stressful it is when we find ourselves in conflict. And you might say, I have something important I'd like to share with you. Can you please let me finish my thoughts before interjecting yours? I promise to do the same for you so that we both may feel fully understood. Right? And in each one of these, I'm giving you a little script. Obviously, you're going to make that script your own. But with communication during conflict, we need to be proactive, especially if what you discovered was that you're more of an indirect or an ineffective communicator. Maybe you're more of an avoider. And I understand that. But the reality is this is something you can't avoid forever because it has this negative ripple effect. When we cannot communicate effectively during conflict, it affects the rest of the relationship and really how we feel about ourselves as well in a negative way. All right, moving on to the second communication conflict issue that I see is using the silent treatment, right, to convey displeasure. Now, I talked a little bit about this at the top, where you might slam a door or roll your eyes. But here's the thing. The silent treatment is really a silent but deadly form of passive aggression, right? This is ineffective, but it's also really damaging to your relationships. Ignoring your partner and or the problems at hand really have this tendency to amplify them, not make them go away. So much of the time, a quick conversation could take care of something that then lingers as we are giving someone the silent treatment, which is also sometimes called stonewalling them, if that's you doing it. And hey, maybe you're on the receiving end of this. Either way, it super sucks. So take a deep breath and a moment for yourself before committing to using the silent treatment as a coping mechanism or really as a weapon. If you know you have this tendency, you can take a deep breath. And I gave you a script. If you're the one who is a silent treatment giver, I gave you a script, which I'm going to read for you right now, that you can use to provide context to the other person without actually employing the silent treatment. You might say, hey, I'm upset right now, and my first instinct is to ignore you and this entire situation, but I want us to effectively problem solve more. Can you please give me a few minutes? You can insert your desired time frame, whatever that is, to cool off and think about how I feel. Then let's come back together and talk it out. I love you and I don't want to fight or ignore you to make a point. Now that may seem like it would be really hard to say, but you can practice these scripts I'm giving you. You can make them your own. You can make it shorter if you need to. But there's something so powerful about naming the action, about naming what you want to do, rather than acting it out. Because from a therapeutic point of view, we can only talk things out or act them out. This is what happens because we don't have the power to like poof, make our feelings disappear. We just don't. So by acknowledging it, you're not letting your emotions take control of you and have you act it out. And you're also cluing in your partner or the other person to what is happening for you. It's so uncomfortable. If you've been in this, because I'm sure all of us have been in some relationship where somebody used the silent treatment. Either we did it or the other person did it. But it is so stressful. It takes up so much bandwidth. If you're in a cold war with someone, it's so painful, and it makes a situation that could be handled within like 15 minutes. It could go on for days. I had a client who said that she didn't talk to her partner for 2 straight weeks. They lived together. And actually, he was the one who wasn't talking to her. Like, talk about being committed to something. 14 days of total silence. Like, that is completely dysfunctional, totally damaging to a relationship, but 100% unnecessary, because we can all learn how to communicate when we're in conflict. Hence why I did this episode for you, and why I created a course, Real Love Revolution, where you can learn how to effectively communicate in your relationships. We dive really deep into communication in the course itself, and boundaries and self-love and a million other things. It's a 12-week virtual course. So if that sounds interesting to you, just go to terricole.com/RLR. We are starting on January 26, 2022. Okay, that was my little pitch for my course. Moving back into this. Communication conflict issue number 3. This is the inability to express your needs. Now, this is something as a psychotherapist for the past almost 25 years, I've seen a lot. So the tip is this: you have to take responsibility for getting your needs met, just like the people that you're in relationships with need to take responsibility for getting their needs met. Because listen, nobody can read your mind, and you can't read their mind. So you've got to gain clarity yourself about why you're upset, about what need of yours is going unmet, by writing it down and then approaching your partner, because we can't be vague. We can't say, you have to be more sensitive, because nobody knows what that means. And even though it might feel awkward at first to write down what you're feeling and what you've come to and what the problem is, you can use it in a conversation with the person when you are dealing with conflict. You can say, hey, I've written down a few things that I want to communicate to you, so can you please wait until I'm done sharing them with you before responding? You know that asking for what I want is challenging for me, and I would really appreciate your patience and compassion while I work at getting better at it. So even though that may sound weird to say for you, you think about it and go, oh, I couldn't say that. Of course you can. And a lot of people in therapy, I will instruct them to write down how they feel and what they want to communicate, because for so many of us, when we're in the heat of the moment, our mind just goes blank. Maybe you have a partner who's like an expert communicator. Maybe they're actually a lawyer, right? And they've got all the arguments ready to go, and you might shut down when you're in conflict. So giving yourself time and space to write down what's going on for you and then sharing it, even if you have to read it, is so incredibly effective for you to communicate effectively when you're in conflict. Okay, so the last issue I'm going to cover is defensiveness and blame. This is another one that is really common. Feeling defensive, which, what would Dr. Harriet Lerner, one of my heroes in the world of psychology, would say that defensiveness is the arch enemy of listening. So what creates this? Sometimes unresolved shame can be the thing that is fueling blaming or defensiveness or excessive feelings of being judged in a relationship, especially when you are struggling with someone, right? Especially if you're in conflict. So this is where the self-work has to come in. You've got to work to understand your own reactions and not use blaming or shaming as a tool to sort of win an argument or win a conflict. Because again, this is another thing. The reason we don't want to do any of this stuff when we're in conflict is because it's damaging to the relationship. And of course, it doesn't resolve the conflict, which is what we're hoping it'll do. So the script here could be, I have something important I'd like to share with you. And again, can you please listen without judgment and without giving me your opinion? I know I'll figure it out. I simply want you to know what's going on for me. Just knowing that you care really helps. Giving your partner insight into what is happening for you without blaming them necessarily for what is happening for you is so productive when it comes to resolving conflict effectively. Remember, speaking up, talking true, resolving conflict, and having the communication to do so, that is good for you and good for your relationships. Because none of us want to be stuck in this purgatory, right, of being misunderstood. And that's exactly what happens when you cannot communicate effectively when you're in conflict. You end up feeling so misunderstood, and it is super duper painful. So again, any of these scripts, these are just loose ideas for you. I wanted to give you something to start with that you can end up making them your own. I hope that this was helpful. And hey, if you want to join me in Real Love Revolution and lots of people from all over the world, and you really want to become an expert communicator, because we handle that in this course, go to terricole.com/RLR to get all of the details. If you love this, please share it on your social media. I'd love to hear from you, so please drop your comments. You know where I hang out. I'm mostly on Instagram. Share this in your story. I will usually repost it. And I just want to say thank you for being in my crew. I hope you guys have an amazing week. And as always, take care of you.